and now it's time for the fun list. Likewise with my best of the year list, which you haven't seen, it's right here. Due to time constraints, I wasn't able to see everything that I wanted to, so you may not see the same usual suspects on my worst list that you would on someone else's. That said, there are probably going to be some common ground denominating factors between them. So, in the words of Spoonie, get ready, motherfuckers, it's gonna get loud. Number 10. King Arthur. It's not exactly revolutionary to take a work of fiction set in older times and update it. Anachronistic works of fiction tend to sell. But there's ways to do it well. It just involves tact, talent, and restraint. You'll find none of that in Guy Ritchie's version of King Arthur. Awful computer effects, weak performances, and a lack of any sense of adventure or scale to anything happening leaves this nightly epic feeling flaccid. With nearly a dozen different iterations of the King Arthur story in existence, there is no reason to settle on this one. Fucking Quest for Camelot is better than this. Number 9. Dark Tower. Idris Elba as a cowboy gunslinger. How do you screw that up? It was practically gift-wrapped, and somewhere in the years that it took to get this movie out of development hell, the potential was lost. The biggest mistake in its production is never setting a clear goal for the characters that the audience understands. When a movie doesn't set the stakes for the story it's telling, then there's no chance for any dramatic weight to develop behind the characters' actions. The Dark Tower is a prime example of what you get when this happens. The end result is a movie that feels like a run-on sentence. I've never read the books, but if a filmmaker has done a good job adapting a book into their chosen medium, then your audience shouldn't have had to read them to enjoy it. And now, after having seen this, I'm convinced the books have to be better than this. They've got to be better. They cannot be as bad as this. So little happened in the movie, I'm honestly struggling to remember a single line of dialogue from any of the characters. Number 8. Pirates of the Caribbean. In terms of the sheer levels of overblown, ham-fisted action films go, I think it's fair to compare the Pirates of the Caribbean movies to the Michael Bay Transformer movies. Granted, I didn't see the newest Transformers movie. I don't have a cerebral death wish. But watching this 5th entry in a series that ran out of steam at number 2 gave me an uncomfortable deja vu to the same stupid, lowbrow, paint-by-numbers action comedy fare you'd get in a lazy, sleazy, incompetent Michael Bay movie. Watching this movie, all I could see was the millions of dollars spent, all the hours of computer rendering and composing, the dozens upon dozens of takes done by the actors, all to make the cinematic equivalent of Number 7. Resident Evil: The Final Chapter. King Arthur may have had bad editing, but it's not until you see Resident Evil: The Final Chapter that you actually realize what bad editing looks like. Now, there may have been action in this movie, but I couldn't describe any of it to you. There's less than half a second between each cut, so you can't see any of what's happening. But even then, a master editor can't make shitty shots work, and it's bad enough when the camera is too close or you film in the dark with poor lighting, which this movie does plenty of both. But in addition to that, imagine what it would be like if the only cameras you had for filming a Jackie Chan fight scene were pen cameras sticking out of both of your character's jacket pockets. That will give you an idea of what it was like to try and watch this piece of shit. And if I'm being embarrassingly honest, the editing may have been the best part of the movie. Number 6. The Bye-Bye Man. It, Get Out, Happy Death Day, It Comes at Night. Did you like any of these horror films from 2017? Okay, let me put it to you this way. Everything those movies are, The Bye-Bye Man is the opposite. Every filmmaking aspect that those movies have respect for, the Bye Bye Man spits on them. Everything those movies try to do, this movie can't do. If those movies are the rainbow, the Bye Bye Man is a fucking flood of stupidity and ineptitude. And I encourage you to not swim in it, because watching this movie might actually make you dumber for having watched it. It's honestly a test of patience watching this movie. And as it gets more and more congealed in its own spunk, for thinking it's the next Freddy Krueger, you're left feeling like you should laugh at it for being so pathetic, but wondering if you'll go to the same circle of hell for making fun of the mentally disabled and people who talk in the theater. Number 5. Alien Covenant. I stood up for Prometheus. Flawed though it was, I enjoyed it, and thought that it was a nice setup for the series of alien movies that we all deserved. Having defended that movie, I sat down to Alien Covenant to see what holding the line against overly picky alien fanboys and sci-fi nerds had yielded me. And I'm here to tell you that it doesn't feel good being fucked over. Covenant has done Phantom Menace levels of damage to the series, not just to the canon, but to the original spirit that was once so iconic and prevalent in the series. Now that's bad enough on its own, right there, but ignoring the fact that it's part of a series, and looking at it as just a movie on its own, it still fails on every single conceivable level. The movie is paced like a surprise pregnancy. You don't know how it started, and then suddenly you're in places that you didn't expect. When you were just somewhere else a moment ago, you're not sure why everyone's angry or what they want, but by the end of everything there's a birth that will lead to disappoint you, and you're poorer than you were before. Number 4. The Emoji Movie. Yes, the fact that there is a movie based off of a tool representing the instrumental lack of human emotion is gross. And it wouldn't surprise anyone by saying it's just a giant ad for social media, as the plot of the movie involves real-life digital apps assisting the main characters. But what's astounding, and what you might not realize, is that the film blatantly advertises social media and emojis, but it also has such a rotten attitude towards social media and anyone who uses them, or emojis. Have you ever seen a movie that is both trying to sell to a demographic while also insulting the same demographic? The rusty nail through the dick is that the movie's plot is copied and pasted from every successful family film from the last 4 years. It can't even justify its own existence. It has to staple something together from everything else. I've always said that there's a difference between a kid's movie and a baby movie. This is a baby movie that could actually do damage to its own demographic. Number 3.
Pan, this is November 4, 09er.
Gee, who would have ever thought that a filmmaking team comprised of one of the writers from Crystal Skulls, the director of Mordecai, and the writer of Star Trek Into Darkness would have turned out a bad movie? Forget referring to this as bad. Referring to it as a movie at all is an overstatement. Because this isn't a movie. It is one long trailer for something bigger. This was so rushed, with all the motivators in all the wrong places. The end result makes the DC movie's previous attempts at world building look like Marvel by comparison. Speaking of Marvel, that may actually be the best way to accurately describe what it's like to watch this movie. Forget the horrible acting, the bad editing, and the blatant stitches that are holding the 9 drafts of the script together. Watching this movie is like watching a compilation of every post-credit scene in a Marvel movie. Just, remove the fun and excitement of those scenes and replace it with constantly checking your watch to see how much longer there is to go. At number 2, Chips. If this is your kind of movie, do not procreate. Do not raise children. Do not impart knowledge onto the next generation. Because the sooner that your gene pool can be left behind, along with this sack of shit movie, the better. Going forward, there needs to be a requirement of at least 5 jokes in your movie before you can be labeled and marketed as a comedy. It's astonishing to me that a 100-minute movie classified as a comedy has 0 jokes in it. This is the kind of home movie you would get if you gave a camera to a bunch of 12-year-old boys. It's nothing but farts, butts, vomiting, homophobia, and talking about filthy sex acts. And I know that's not much of a description, but I defy you. Try and watch this thing. Since 21 Jump Street was written with a bit of cleverness to it, if it was personified as a smart person, Chips is someone with fucking brain damage. And the oh-so-coveted number 1 spot for the worst movie of 2017 is undoubtedly the Death Note movie. Lots of people are interested in bad movies because they want to find something to rent and laugh at as a good time. Some movies are good for this, but there is a darker, more sinister kind of bad movie, and that is what my number 1 spot is almost always reserved for, is for something that is morally reprehensible, something that is too dull, too boring, too stupid, and deprived to actually be entertaining to laugh at. I could have been doing laundry instead of watching this. I could have been doing taxes, and I still would have been producing something good out of my life. By comparison, the other movies on this list are gifts in the mail from a friend who bought something for you off of your Amazon wish list. The Death Note movie is more like a jury summons. It has the production quality of a Hallmark Channel horror movie, about the same acting level, with no understanding of the most basic concept of suspense, character writing, or even setup. Watching this movie is what I think it feels like to read a bad smut novel. And that's just as its own creation, speaking as just a individual, fresh piece of media on its own. If you want to talk about it as an adaptation of the source material, we could be here all fucking week. It's worse than The Last Airbender, and I will repeat that as many times as I need to. With the exception of Willem Dafoe's Ryuk, it's astonishing that they got every single aspect and element wrong. If I could cast one movie into hell this year, it would be Netflix's Death Note movie. It makes Bright look like the fucking Godfather, and it honestly has me worried for the quality of future Netflix original movies. And there we go, the culmination of my suffering throughout the year. I'm hoping to have plenty more to choose from for next year. If you think you saw something worse, let me know. If you saw the same things that I did, tell me, because misery loves company. Thank you and good night.